Hey guys, welcome to CakeWalk Cambridge. I'm Aisha and today we're going to start with Chapter 7, Human Nutrition. This was one of my absolute favorite chapters and I'm so excited to help you all with it today. It's quite long, so you all will probably have to pause the video, take breaks, come back, or divide the chapter. And so I have also divided it into sections based on your syllabus, that is 7.1 through 5. So I hope that makes your life easy as well. But just tell me how you like the video after it's done, and I hope you understand this as well as possible. So let's start. Okay, so we're going to start with 7.1. So the first thing you need to know in this chapter, human nutrition, is what a diet is, a balanced diet. So a balanced diet is basically a diet that includes adequate amounts. So adequate means sufficient or correct proportions. So if you're at correct proportions, adequate amounts, sufficient proportions, you get your mark. So you get 1 mark for adequate amounts or correct amounts of all food groups like carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, and water to provide energy for growth, repair, and the smooth functioning of body processes. So this last part about to provide energy for growth repair is not really included in your syllabus, but it was present in my textbook, and I always included it in my answer because somehow I feel it rounds off the answer, gives it a complete feel. There's that finality. So I feel you should include this. Again, I have made bold the terms that you need to know and that will give you your marks. So this could be asked for 2 marks, 3 marks, very rarely comes for 1 mark. Your second mark is always about listing the food groups. So yeah, you just need to know all of that. Then basically your diet changes, as you probably already know, according to your needs. So males require on average more energy than females. That is due to body build. Now I'm a huge feminist, so don't worry, I'm not saying that males are stronger or taller or whatever. Both males and females can have the same energy needs, but usually because of testosterone, there's an increase in muscle mass in males, and that is what causes them to require more energy. However, if you have a very fit female who is much taller than whichever specific male you're taking for comparison, she will obviously need more energy. So it really depends. Children need to take in more proteins and energy for growth and development. As studied in previous chapters, protein is required for growth and repair. So since children still have to hit puberty and grow and become adults, they need to take in a lot of proteins for that. Pregnant women require, so pregnancy, as you already know, is when a woman has conceived a child, so pregnant women require more iron, vitamin D, water, protein, and calcium. You will learn the use of each of these stated here in further slides, and you need to know this. You need to know every use, okay, and what they do. Breastfeeding women, that is basically lactating women, um, those who feed their young milk, require more water, and that is another nutrient requirement. So you need to know children need more proteins and energy. Energy comes from carbohydrates. Males require more energy on average, usually. Pregnant women require iron, vitamin D, water, protein, and calcium, and breastfeeding women require water. I've not really seen this in any paper as of now, but I've obviously not done all papers. But I think it's good to note because this is mentioned in your syllabus. A candidate should be able to identify what minerals and nutrients are required for each of these categories. Okay, energy. Now this I've also put in a previous PPT, a previous video, the uses of energy, but I find this so important and not stressed on enough. This comes in your chapter 11 and 12 where they give you all the uses of energy. But I feel it also is relevant to this chapter because the main purpose of a balanced diet is to provide energy. So energy is required for muscle contraction. That is when I'm contracting my biceps here. Growth, when I'm growing from being 6 to 10, for example. Maintaining a constant body temperature, that is homeostasis, which you will learn in chapter 14. It's a very intriguing concept. Active transport, as we studied, that is movement of ions and particles from a region of lower concentration to higher concentration against a concentration gradient using energy for respiration. Then you have the conduction of nerve impulses, which is also a part of chapter 14, which is basically makes up your sensitivity segment in your life processes. Then you have protein synthesis, which is the building up of proteins by assembling amino acids in specific sequences. And then, of course, cell division, that is by mitosis or meiosis, which you will do in chapter 17. You should know at least 4 to 5 of these. They don't usually ask you for so many, but it's always good to state more or to know more for your own satisfaction, because if you forget even one on your final day, you will kick yourself for not learning this list. Okay, now malnutrition. So basically, people associate malnutrition with not getting enough food, but malnutrition could also mean not getting the right type of food. Not only the amount, it's not only the quantity, it's also the quality and the type. So this is basically what you need to know. So starvation, as you know, is caused by not taking in enough food. This relates to the quantity, and this is a result of muscle wastage, loss of weight, and weakness. So when you eat less, you lose more weight. You get that? Your muscles waste because the energy that was stored in your body is then converted to support you for your processes. So muscle wastage occurs, and you feel weak because there's hardly any energy left. You're not energized. Then coronary heart disease, which is a very enthralling topic in my opinion, is okay. So basically, you will learn this later, of course, in chapter 9. But basically, when you have fats, like if you have a lot of butter, or cholesterol that is present in egg, too much of it, okay? The fats form a layer of deposition on your coronary artery. Your coronary artery is an artery in the heart. It's very important, and you will be asked to identify it in your IGCSE exam. Basically the artery on the heart that you're supposed to identify is the coronary artery. So the fats form a layer on top of the artery, and obviously when the layer is formed, the diameter of the artery is reduced. So the passageway through the artery becomes thinner and narrower. So when this happens, less blood supply is sent to the heart, and less is sent away as well. So there's less oxygenation of blood that basically happens. So the transportation of blood is slower and much less efficient. So due to this, less blood enters the heart, and so an angina can form, which is basically chest pain. And what is a result of this is a heart attack, where not enough blood is being oxygenated fast, and this could also lead to death or a stroke. So the fat layer that is deposited is called a thrombus, which forms a thrombosis as well. You will learn all these terms in chapter 9, but it's a very intriguing concept. But yeah, you should know this as well. So coronary heart disease is due to an excess intake of fats. Then you have constipation, which is the result of lack of fiber intake, where your bowel movements aren't smooth. Egestion is a problem. Excretion is the wrong term. Egestion or defecation is the problem here, where feces is not able to smoothly pass out of the body. Then we have obesity, which is, as you know, it's basically when you gain a lot of weight, you take in too much food into the body. It's basically the opposite of starvation. Could also be caused due to taking excess fats. That causes your body to like bloat up in layman's terms. You gain weight, and that causes a lot of problems, like in terms of self-confidence and dizziness. So yeah, those are your problems. Then you have scurvy. Scurvy is basically bleeding gums. Symptoms include bleeding under the skin and the poor healing of wounds, and it is caused by a lack of vitamin C, which we will study in the next few slides. So I hope I kind of explained everything to you, but if you have any questions, feel free to always email me. Okay, now this is such an important table. I just love this table. I made this and I was very excited. So here you have your food group. You have the source, that what could give you this food group, a use of this food group, and a lack of the food group causes what? So here you have carbohydrates. You get them from bread, pasta, and rice. They're used for energy. They provide. You never write produce in your exams. Produce is not accepted. It is rejected. So you write provide energy for carbohydrates, sugars, glucose, anything. Lactose, you provide energy. So energy is provided. Cell wall, as you know, cellulose in plant cells made from carbohydrates make cell walls, and carbohydrates are also used for storage. A lack of carbohydrates causes energy deficiency because carbohydrates primarily provide energy. Then you have proteins. Proteins basically come from meat, chicken, and fish. Many other examples like eggs, etc. But I'm just going to give you like three. A use is growth, repair, and making enzymes, antibodies, it's the cytoplasm sometimes, membranes of cells. So yeah. And lack of them causes marasmus or kwashiorkor, which these two you will learn in the next few slides. It's not a topic that I actually like because there's so much to learn, like with the symptoms and all, but you must learn it. I'll come to that later. Okay, then we have fats, which you can obtain from butter, milk, and cheese. A use of fats is insulation, energy, cell membrane, storage. Okay, pretty much. Basically, there's a layer of tissue under your skin called adipose tissue, which is basically fatty tissue in layman's terms, and that prevents heat loss. So that's your example of insulation. And a lack of it causes a lack of energy again. Then vitamin C comes from citrus fruits like orange and lemons. It acts as a catalyst in respiration. I've not really seen this in any paper, but it was there in my textbook, so I thought I should include it. And as we saw before, lack of vitamin C causes scurvy. Later on, I need you to pause this video and test yourself on each of these and go back to the previous slide and, just like try and figure out the symptoms of each of these disorders, basically. Then you have vitamin D, which comes from oily fish. This comes in an MCQ. Cheese and milk. These come in MCQs where they ask you which contains what. You pick vitamin D for oily fish or one of these. The use of vitamin D is to absorb calcium salts, and a lack of vitamin D causes rickets and osteomalacia. Okay, so I'm going to skip these two for now and go to calcium because they're directly related. So calcium also comes from cheese and milk. It strengthens bones and teeth. So therefore, a lack of vitamin D means lack of calcium, which means lack of strengthening of bones and teeth. Rickets is basically a condition in which your bones shape outwards. They're weak, they're thin, and they're not in the correct shape. They're bent, basically bent bones. So a lack of vitamin D causes a lack of calcium, which directly relates to rickets and the second disorder. Yeah. Then we'll go to fiber. Fiber comes from plant cell walls. They include the smooth movement of food, like bowel movement through the intestines. And a lack of fiber causes constipation. Water, of course, it's a solvent, and lack of it causes dehydration. Iron is present in red meat. It makes hemoglobin, and a lack of it causes anemia, where you feel sleepy, tired, and weak all the time. So you need iron because iron is part of red blood cells, which transports oxyhemoglobin, and that is what keeps processes functioning. Okay? So I hope this table helped you. Okay, so now we're going to the big one. Protein energy malnutrition. So we have kwashiorkor versus marasmus. So kwashiorkor is basically only a protein deficiency, whereas marasmus is protein and carbohydrate deficiency. You need to just memorize these two. I don't really have a trick for you to memorize them. Yeah. Basically, kwashiorkor happens with smaller children who are like 1 year old. That is when their mother gets a second baby, and so the firstborn child is weaned off to starchy foods like yam and cassava, and so they miss out on the protein present in breast milk and other substances, and so they have kwashiorkor, which leads to dry skin, pot belly, changes in hair color, and weakness and irritability. Marasmus actually happens to younger children, so it happens to babies up to 12 months, which leads to reduced fat and muscle tissue, and thin skin hangs in folds. But kwashiorkor can be treated using dry skimmed milk. Also, if you want to know the similarity and differences of kwashiorkor and marasmus in detail with the mark scheme points, I suggest you go to Feb-March 2020 42. That paper, one of the questions in Feb-March 2020 42 has the similarities and differences between kwashiorkor and marasmus. You go there, check the mark scheme, and hopefully that helps you. Okay, we're done with 7.1. Now we're going to 7.2, which is definitely more interesting. Okay, so the alimentary canal. You need to know all of these terms by heart. Actually, I found this the most interesting part of the chapter because it's so easy to mug up these terms. They make a lot of sense to you. Let's try and see if I can explain them. So ingestion is the taking in of substances such as food and drink into the body through the mouth. Self-explanatory. Mechanical digestion is the breakdown of food into smaller pieces without chemical change to the food molecules, which is basically a physical process brought about by teeth in a process called mastication, where they bite the food or grind it or chew it, tear it, break it. Then you have chemical digestion, which is a chemical process, breakdown of large insoluble molecules into smaller soluble ones. Then this usually happens in the presence of enzymes. Then you have absorption, which is the movement of small food molecules and ions through the wall of the intestine into the blood. Absorption always happens at the small intestine, at the ileum. Don't forget this, it's very important to know this, okay? Then we have assimilation, which is a definition asked for 2 to 3 marks. Very important, I've seen it especially in recent papers. It's the movement of digested food molecules into the cells of the body where they are used and thus become part of cells. I've not seen questions that describe that delve into this topic deeper, but the definition is the bare minimum that you need to know. Then we have digestion, which is the passing out of food that has not been digested or absorbed out of the body through the anus. Memorize these, pause the slide, go through it slowly, and this is the order of how your digestive system works. Okay, you should also be able to label the parts of the digestive system. So here you have the mouth at A, you have the salivary glands at B. This is a cool picture actually. Then you go down, this is the esophagus or the esophagus, whatever you want to call it. It's basically the food pipe where food is pushed through. So first I'll just explain the process. So you take in food through your mouth, you chew it with your teeth in a process called mastication, where mechanical digestion takes place. The salivary gland releases an enzyme called amylase, salivary amylase, which breaks down the carbohydrates or starch present in the food to maltose. The tongue rolls the food into balls and pushes it down the esophagus. In the esophagus, peristalsis occurs. Peristalsis is basically the wave-like contraction of the esophagus. It moves to push down the food. In the stomach, the walls of the stomach churn the food into a substance called chyme, which is CHYME. The walls of the stomach secrete gastric juice, which is a mixture of hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid has a pH of 2, and so it kills bacteria or denatures bacteria present in the food. And the other component of gastric juice is pepsin. You need to know these two. Pepsin is it's a protease. It's an enzyme that breaks down proteins to amino acids and peptides. So the pepsin works best in its optimum condition is 37 degrees Celsius, that's human body temperature, at pH 2, which is the pH of hydrochloric acid. So the function of hydrochloric acid is 2. 1, to provide an acidic optimum pH for pepsin to work best or to work at its optimum pH, and 2 is to kill bacteria. After this, there is a little sphincter over here in the stomach called the pyloric sphincter. It's a flap. It opens to let the chyme into the duodenum, which is the starting part of the small intestine here. At this place, the pancreas releases pancreatic juice, which basically contains lipase, trypsin, and amylase. Basically, amylase again breaks down the starch, remnants of other starch to maltose. Trypsin is another protease which breaks down peptides to amino acids and proteins to amino acids. And lipase is basically an enzyme that digests fats to fatty acids and glycerol. Then over here in the liver, we have the gallbladder, which you will see later. So basically, there is a substance called bile, which is produced by the liver and stored in the gallbladder. Bile is a green, yellow, watery kind of liquid that is released by the gallbladder, secreted into the duodenum, which basically neutralizes the acidic mixture and makes it more alkaline or neutral, because amylase and lipase work best in slightly alkaline conditions, and so it contains sodium hydrogen carbonate, which helps to do this. Then after that, the food enters the other part of the small intestine. Duodenum is part of the small intestine. So in the ileum, absorption takes place. Maltase is an enzyme that is present on the ileum, the villus of the ileum, that digests maltose to glucose, which is then absorbed by the small intestine. Most of the water is also absorbed by the small walls of the small intestine, and the rest of the feces, which is undigested food and fiber, go through the large intestine. It is stored in the rectum and then digested by the anus. Also, in your esophagus, you have circular muscle and longitudinal muscle that are like an antagonistic pair of muscle pairs. The circular muscle contracts when food is moved, and the other longitudinal muscle contracts. So the circular muscle contracts to make the part of the esophagus narrower, the diameter narrower. You may be given a diagram and asked to label which is which based on this. Also, mucus is secreted by the walls here that lubricate the lining and prevent the lining from wear and tear or enzyme attack. So basically, this was your digestive system. I hope it helped you, and we shall move on. Okay, so here you have bile production in the liver. You have the gallbladder right under this little flap that you can see. This is the hepatic duct. You don't really need to know the name. The bile duct. This is the duodenum, the small intestine, and that's the pancreatic duct. Okay. Okay, diarrhea and cholera, very important concept. So basically, you've probably watched a lot of this in shows where a lot of characters suffer from diarrhea. I'm not really sure why, but this term is used, so you should know what it is. Its definition is that it is the loss of watery feces. You should be able to state this. It can be cured using oral rehydration therapy. Very, very, very important. I can't stress on how important it is. Oral rehydration therapy. It is basically the intake of salts and water into the body to restore it to its original capacity where required nutrients are again present in the body. Now, diarrhea can develop into cholera. So, cholera is a disease caused by bacteria. You should be able to state this as well. So, basically, the cholera bacterium enters the intestine and produces a toxin, okay, which causes the secretion of chloride ions. Now, chloride ions, you should be able to know the name. You can't just write ions. Chloride ions gives you a mark always. Chloride ions into the intestine. Now, when this happens, the water potential of the gut, the small intestine, is lowered because there is a higher proportion of ions is to water, correct? So the concentration is high, the water potential is low. So this causes water to move from blood cells, into the small intestine via osmosis from a higher to low water potential gradient through the membrane. And this causes water to enter the small intestine and it is then ejected out of the body. And that is why there's a loss of watery feces. Okay. This could come for like 6 marks sometimes. I've seen it in papers. So I suggest you get yourself well versed with this topic. You do a lot of MCQs and the long answers on this one. I think May-June 2020, 42, I think, had this question. So I suggest you revise that paper. Okay, we're done with 2 segments, 7.3. Okay, so now this is basically getting deeper into your digestive system. So this focuses on your teeth. So you should be able to identify which tooth is where based on a diagram. So these first 4 are incisors. Then you have the canines. Here, this one and this one are the canines. Then you have 2 premolars and 3 molars. So this is just one half. This is basically a mirror image of this half. This is basically what your jaw looks like, and these are your teeth. Now this table gives you a concise sheet of information of what you need to know. I don't think there's any point in me explaining this. You just basically need to learn it. You can pause the video and learn this table. You need to know the position, the description, and the function. This can come in dichotomous keys in your MCQ papers. It's come before. I have attempted these questions. So don't lose out here, okay? Just learn this. Okay, now this is the structure of a single tooth. So you have the enamel, which is the outer covering. Then you have the dentine. So the enamel is really hard, okay? The dentine is a little softer. The pulp is very soft, and it is where nerve endings are present. That is why when you get a toothache, your nerve endings act up in your pulse. They get irritated. The top part above the gum is called the crown, and the bottom is called the root. You need to know everything here. The outside down is called the cement. And these are your nerves, blood vessels, and this is the jaw bone. Okay, so now I'm going to explain to you how tooth decay occurs and everything. So just keep this diagram in mind. Okay, so basically tooth decay and dental care. So first you need to know that tooth decay occurs as a result of bacteria feeding on food between your teeth. So as you know, you eat food and there are little few molecules or particles of food that get stuck in between your teeth. Invariably, no one's blaming you. So the bacteria that is present in your mouth or that comes from the food or any other place that you've taken it in feeds on this food, and it respires using this food and using the sugar in the food, and it produces an acid. This acid causes the enamel to dissolve. The enamel is really hard, so it dissolves after a long period of time. And after the enamel is penetrated, it's very easy to get a toothache because the dentine is much softer. Okay, so when this happens, the it corrodes away as well. And then after that, it reaches your pulp cavity, which has the nerve endings present. And when the nerve endings are present, you get a sense of irritation in your nerves, and that causes a toothache. So basically, there's a concept called the critical pH, which is basically the pH under which the mouth is under attack. The teeth are under attack by acids produced by bacteria. So what you can do to avoid this is use fluoride toothpaste. Fluoride toothpaste are very good for dental care. You should know this for chemistry as well. You have regular dental checkups, you avoid sweets and fizzy drinks, and you floss and you brush twice a day. I've gotten this question from an O-levels paper for 6 marks, so I'm not doing O-levels, but my teacher gave it to me for a mock exam, and this was there for 6 marks, the whole thing of teeth. So I suggest you learn it properly just in case your teacher decides to switch things up a bit. 7.4, not bad. Okay, I've already explained all of this in the whole diagram. This is just a concise version of it all. So chemical digestion, here's your definition. And also what's important to know is that they're broken down into small soluble molecules so that they can be absorbed and used by the body. So if you supposing have if you probably have a molecule of starch in the intestine, and the question is why isn't the starch absorbed, you will say A, it's too big, and B, it won't pass through the membrane. Okay. So now here's your enzyme. You have amylase, protease, and lipase. Amylase is produced by salivary glands. It works on starch and it produces simpler sugars. Protease is produced by the stomach and pancreas. Amylase is also produced by the pancreas, by the way. Protease works on proteins and digests them into peptides and amino acids. Lipase is produced by the pancreas, digests fats into fatty acids and glycerol. This is what you should have known in 8th grade, so I'm just going to move forward. Okay, so basically this is the path of starch or carbohydrates. So in the mouth, there's the breakdown by teeth. And then you have the salivary glands that release amylase, which breaks down the starch into maltose. Nothing happens in the esophagus, in the stomach. It's churned by walls. Nothing happens either. In the duodenum, amylase breaks down starch again to maltose due to pancreatic amylase being secreted. And then in the ileum, maltase breaks down maltose and glucose is absorbed by the small intestine. Proteins. Proteins are broken again by teeth. No chemical digestion in the mouth, so they remain proteins. In the stomach, they're churned by walls, and pepsin breaks down proteins. I've already mentioned this to you. So learn this little box into peptides. In the duodenum, trypsin breaks down peptides to amino acids, and nothing happens in the ileum. It is just absorbed. Then we have fats, which are broken down by teeth. Nothing happens until the duodenum, no chemical digestion, where lipase breaks down fats to fatty acids and glycerol. Bile is produced. Now, an important function of bile, I should have mentioned this, bile is also used for emulsification, where it breaks down large fats into smaller droplets to increase the surface area for a faster rate of chemical digestion to increase the rate of collisions. You need to state all these points and you get 3 marks at least. And it also neutralizes acidic conditions for an optimum pH. And fatty acids and glycerol are absorbed by the small intestine at the ileum. 7.5, easy chapter. Absorption. So the small intestine is where absorption of soluble molecules occurs. As I explained before, most water is absorbed in the small intestine, but a little water is absorbed in the colon. So most of the water, small intestine, less in the large intestine. The villi and microvilli have projections and a large surface area to raise the rate of absorption. The villi and microvilli are present in the small intestine. they're basically projections, okay? Then you have lacteals, which are a part of the lymphatic system, which we'll learn in chapter 9. They absorb fatty acids and glycerol, and another adaptation. These are basically all adaptations that you need to know. Capillaries provide a good network of blood supply for absorption. So this is your diagram. You have a thin epithelium here, thin, which is one cell thick to increase the diffusion rate. Microvilli increase the surface area. A lacteal is basically part of the lymphatic system. You will learn about it later. It absorbs fatty acids and glycerol. Then you have a blood capillary again. So lacteals are basically to absorb fats. Okay, so basically that was your chapter. I hope I broke it down for you and explained everything and gave you the tips to be successful with studying this, especially. Keep pausing the video and go through tables, take it up for yourself. Ask, give your textbook to your mom, doesn't matter if you're 16, 17, 15. Give it to your mom, tell her to take up for you, revise, and I hope this helps you. We're gonna get through this together. Bye!